We have moved up in status a little bit, so I am now playing the role of a travelling knight who is visiting one of his retainers, somebody of moderate means, sort of mid-range social status, but he's also aware that the posh guy is coming. So, Chris, do you want to take us through what you've presented for me?
Again, we have bread, slightly better bread than last time, although it's still brownish. This is made with wheat flour.
Right.
And I particularly like this because this is made in a traditional medieval way, and it's made using beer balm instead of yeast. So this
What's beer balm?
This is the froth of the beer.
Right.
And it contains lots of good yeasty stuff.
Right, fantastic. So it's still not white bread though, is it?
No, it's still what we would call a wholemeal bread.
And it's fairly heavy.
Yes.
Which is lovely. I like heavy bread. It's not light and fluffed up. Bacon.
Bacon, yeah.
The ever-present pork, but this is sliced now.
This is proper bacon as we understand it, and this is going to go in a bean pottage. Again, it's called bean pottage because it's cooked in a pot.
Right. Okay.
So,
and leeks, familiar?
And leeks. Most people, even if they lived in a town, would have a little garden patch.
Just out the back?
Just out the back, where they grow some herbs, grow a few vegetables, keep the pig.
Just tell us a little bit about the sort of preservation of food. You talked about for the peasant having maybe their pig hanging by the fire. What other kinds of food preservation?
Well, there are three main ways of preserving food and have been since prehistoric times. These are smoking, salting and drying.
Okay.
And one of the things that appears quite often in medieval food is dried meat.
Right.
Which is a bit like shoe leather.
Right.
And you have to cook it twice. You boil it the first time to sort of revitalise it. And the same with salt meat. You have to boil it a couple of times.
Presumably to remove the huge amount of salt that's in it. Right.
Yes. And that, again, wasn't thrown away.
Yeah.
That was something that was used by the tanners. There is nothing that a tanner will not use.
That's fascinating. So the society was very much about, look, that has value. Let's sell that to somebody or give it to somebody or have it. Was salt an important commodity then? It sounds like that must be very important.
Yes, it was, because the salt was a marker of your social status. If you had your own salt pot, you were probably quite well off.
And would salt have been expensive then? I mean, if people are using it for preserving food, presumably it's not that expensive.
It was quite an expensive commodity. It's in England we don't have really naturally occurring salt. It either has to be mined, usually from Cheshire, where it's still mined today, or it's produced by a process called panning, where you take brackish water and you boil it. So you evaporate it so that the salt's in the bottom, which they still do on the East Coast today.
So I presume there was a sort of medieval industry of people making salt and transporting it to the middle of the middle of the country, and it probably got more expensive the further away you went.
Yes.
Is that just going to go in like that, or
no,
do I need to do something?
That needs chopping up. If you chop the leek, I'll chop the bacon.
This is a big medieval-shaped knife, isn't it?
It is, yes. Of course, if you were a professional cook, you would have your own set of knives, which would be the tools of your trade. Right.
And different knives for different jobs, I presume, even back then.
Even back then.
And most people would be carrying their own utility knife anyway,
the
equivalent of a penknife. Or...
Yes. If you went out to dinner anyway, you would take your own cutlery. Right, just going to pop this in the pot. So that's the leeks going into the pot with the broad beans and some onion stock. The bacon, of course, will help to provide salt to...
of course, because it's salted bacon.
Yes.
And fat, as well as fat on it, pig fat.
So just give that a stir. There you go.
Wonderful.
And leave it to cook.
While we're waiting for the pottage to cook, which is going to take some time, you brought some other things here. So we've got the bread, and I noticed the plates are different as well.
Yes, we've moved up in status, Jason.
Right.
So we're no longer using wood, apart from the occasional wood utensil. We've now got a bit of money, so we're investing in some quite nice pottery.
And it's got a little bit of decoration on it, hasn't it?
It has,
So,
yes.
So it's sort of showing you're moving up in the world.
Yes.
And you don't have to use wood anymore. And what is this? So
this is boiled pork with a sage sauce.
food would have been seasonal as well, wouldn't it? So your garden would have grown certain things at a certain time, and stuff would have been available to buy, but only when it was in season.
Only in season, and it was very much the thing in the Middle Ages. You would eat what you had available. There are stories of people in times of famine waiting for the new grass to come through in the spring because that was the only green stuff they could find to eat.
Good grief. Yes, so you'd be very much more aware of the seasons, as well as your food would vary with the season. So you might look forward to mushroom season, for example. You might look forward to, obviously, harvest, and the harvest festival means so much more when that's the surplus you're putting aside for the winter.
Yeah.
So back to the pork then. Shall I try this?
I think you're very brave. Do you want to know what's in the sauce?
Yes, please. Yes.
Right. The sauce is parsley and sage ground together.
Right.
With
in a mortar and pestle.
In a pestle and mortar, with the addition of a hard-boiled egg yolk, which works as an emulsifier or a thickener, and then with some vinegar, some wine vinegar added to it.
Didn't they use egg yolk for paints as well?
Yes.
So it's basically
yeah, that was raw. Sorry, that was your raw egg yolk.
Raw egg yolk, right? Where this is dried. This is cooked egg yolk.
Yes.
Right. So, can I use fingers?
You can. Using your fingers in the Middle Ages was absolutely the thing to do, as long as you only used the fingers of your right hand.
Right hand, not left hand.
Yes. One of the problems we have with recreating medieval dishes is that the recipes we have were written by professional cooks for professional cooks. So they don't have any quantities.
Right. So it's more an aid memoir.
Yeah.
Or a showing off. This is what I've cooked for the king.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, it's got quite a kick. It's just a surprise. Would that be something, as you moved up the status sort of ladder, you start to get stronger flavours?
Absolutely, yes. If you're at the bottom, you don't have the money to be able to access some of the things that give you the strong flavours.
Well, it's quite surprising, but it's quite heavy. It's not unpleasant, but it's very different from the sort of hearty, mellow fare of the peasant food that we've experienced. That I actually like it.
Gosh.
But it's quite an aggressive food.
Yeah.
Sounds bizarre to say it, but you really know you're eating something that's strongly flavoured. And I suppose for somebody mid-status, referring to somebody high status, look, here's something I think
you might
like.
Yes.
Now, you brought a lovely pie along here. Tell me about pies and the history of pies and stuff, because that seems very English to me.
Yes. Pies were medieval fast food. I have, as a special treat to you, made this pie with proper pastry.
Right.
Rather than basic medieval pastry, which was just flour and water.
So pastry is technically edible, but
yes, it's more like the box that your burger comes in than something you would want to eat. It's packaging and it's oven-proof cookware.
All in one?
All in one.
Right, that's interesting.
It's a way of keeping some of the moisture in the food while it's in the oven.
Do you think, I suppose people would have eaten if they were very hungry?
Definitely the basic flour and water pastry, I suspect people would have thrown away. Bearing in mind this was a time when there wasn't good dentistry.
Right, so it would have been quite hard to actually
really
eat.
Hard.
Right. But then you've created here a slightly more modern pastry recipe so that I can try and eat it.
Yes. This again is a medieval pastry recipe.
Right.
But because we're in the sort of yeoman farmer region, I've put butter in it as shortening.
To lift it a little bit and make it more edible and less teeth destroying.
Yes.
Fantastic.
It's lamb, a little bit of onion and some coriander.
Okay. Well, I'm looking forward to this.
And it will fall apart. There we go, the middle's fallen out.
Now, one of the other things that occurs to me is all this food is quite hearty and quite filling.
Yes.
You don't need to eat much of it.
I mean, this sort of level, we're still talking about people who are getting up with the dawn and going out to work.
Delicious.
Really?
Absolutely delicious.
Gosh.
Yep, I like it.
Very simple. But the sort of thing you could take if you were going on a journey or if you were going to be out in the field all day and not being able to get back. In medieval towns, there would have been pie shops working 24 hours a day.
Oh, so they did have sort of cook shops and stuff.
Yeah.
Would the average medieval person of this status have their own ovens, and what sort of, would they have an open fire like we have here? Or?
Out in the countryside, they would have probably had an open fire, as we have here. They might, if they were a bit higher up in status than our yeoman farmer, have had a cookhouse or an oven, but ovens were very expensive to build. More likely, you would be in a village setting where you would have a village baker, and you would take your pies, your pasties, even your pottages, and cook them in the village bakehouse.
So you'd have a communal bakehouse
Yes.
for the group of people you lived
Yes,
with.
you might have a baker who was running it as a business, baking the bread, but once the bread was baked, he would leave the oven hot so that everybody else could go along and cook their food.
Much more communal then than we have today. And often people go off and eat their own meals in the same family. Whereas then it was the whole community would have been using the same facilities, and
Yes.
everybody would have been chatting away and cooking and comparing and probably gossiping a lot.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Yeah. This pie feels like travel food, which is fantastic because it's exactly what it is. The pastry acts as a kind of packaging for you, and it's very hearty and kind of filling. This is a little bit more like status food. It's got much stronger flavours. It's the sort of thing you serve to guests if you want to impress them. Shall we see how the pottage is doing? What is this in here?
This is broad beans with bacon and leeks.
Fantastic, and you've given me a lovely horn spoon there, so again, slightly higher status, and a nice plate with some decoration on it, and bread.
And bread, as always, you've got your trencher bread. So we'll put some of the beans, just to soften the bread a bit. We'll have some juice. There we go.
Really nice. More complex flavours than the earlier food we were eating.
This is one of those crossover dishes. This could be eaten just as easily by the peasant in his cottage or the knight in his castle.
Right, but for the peasant it would be more sophisticated dish,
Yeah.
and for the knight it would be a simpler dish.
Yes.
Then, yeah. I have to say it's very nice. It's very nice indeed. So this is what a knight might have eaten when he was visiting one of his mid-status retainers. Next episode we're going to have a look at what a knight would have eaten at home. Will it be different, or will it be more of the same? Let's find out. From the pie and me, thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe, and don't forget that notify button, and we'll see you next time.